Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm here to show off my fourth build of the league. Kind of went a little, didn't really mind about any of the expenses on this one. It's fairly expensive. Considering the price, it's not super high DPS yet, but it's only in its 80s, and you can see I haven't even spent 5 points down there because I'm deciding exactly the route I want to go right now before I go to my end game tree. But anyways, the build here is a Vaal Earthquake cast on crit Dark Pact. It utilizes a bunch of uniques, a bunch of mechanics. Look, there's a ton of keystones, a lot going on. There's a few other people I've noticed in the community doing similar sort of things, which is why I want to get the video out, even though the character isn't complete yet. Just to have it out there. I don't think anybody's doing Vaal Earthquake cast on crit, but they are doing strength stacking with, several of the mechanics being used here. They're just not getting as absurd as I am with it because, they want to go a little bit more viable route. But this is extremely fun build that is quite good so far. It's honestly, I would happily run it. Like I said, the only problem is the price, and it would have been a lot cheaper earlier on in the league. Now it is a lot more expensive because what happens are the replica Alberon's Warpath goes way up in price. I think I could have picked them up at the beginning of the league for 5 to 7 divines. Now they're between 20 and 30. That's the way it goes. Anyways, I'm going to, because of what people have said in previous videos, I'm going to go ahead and roll some footage while I talk a bit here. Just so that we can have something going in the background. So, as you can see, it's a walking simulator for the most part, but it does it pretty well. Is it going to do it as well as a fully optimized RF build these days? Oh, I don't know about that. But it's quite tanky, and it's quite good for being in the mid 80s. Yeah, I'm clearing any level map. I was by 83 or so. I was able to clear tier 16s without an issue. This map here, as you can see, is a
Your torment is over.
looks like it's tier 13. You'll notice that my map setup is mostly configured for abysses, and I've still got all the torment stuff in there too, but abysses and harvest are really good for leveling at the moment, so my tree is configured for new characters to get to them quickly. But as a result, you'll see here I come to the end of the abyss and I kind of draw it out. I don't kill it right away because I'm trying to. At the end of the abysses, it's nice to milk the XP a little bit. You don't have to just go in there and wipe out the pillar or whatever. But talking about some of the other mechanics going on, it is a dissolution of the flesh build. It also has blood magic. And you're going to ask me, how do you have so little health when you're running both of those things? But the answer to that is the build isn't endgame yet, so I haven't swapped over to a tree that would result in more like 10,000 health as opposed to this where it's closer to like 6k. We're running Scion mostly so that we can take the Pathfinder node. With the Pathfinder node, we do not need to take Trader, which is important for this because this build has 100% crit rate. And we're scaling not just... Most cast on crit, is scaling the spell. We're scaling both because why not? One of the things that's a little disappointing about Path of Exile is that hybrid builds are not usually very good due to the fact that Path of Exile requires you to really focus on your scaler for a single thing, typically. Certainly attacks or spells, it's pretty hard to do both. And every time GGG tries to implement something to get people to do that, it doesn't really go too well usually. I mean, we've got some things that help, but even when we use those, like Crown of Eyes or Battle Mage's Cry and things like that, even when people use them, it's typically only to scale the spell, not really to scale the attack. But Vaal Earthquake is powerful. And later here, I don't even have it in this video, but it will, as a result, be able to have permanent Fortify due to the Fortify tree nodes, which is an extra 20% of damage mitigation on top of the 40% from Petrified Blood. But and as you can see here, in case you haven't seen one of these builds yet that use Dissolution of the Flesh, they also typically take this combination of things. They take Petrified Blood, and they take we'll pull it up real quick. Eternal Youth. Oh, I couldn't think of that. But with that combination, what happens is that you get all the upsides of Petrified Blood and none of the downsides. Because Dissolution of the Flesh goes on top of your... since it's only interested in your reserved life and it doesn't care about your maximum life at all, you're able to ignore the downside of Petrified Blood, which is that it reserves your health. And as a result, we're also able to pick up an extra 30% spell damage due to being low life, which is useful here because we can't run any auras. We can't run any auras because we have to go Blood Magic, and Petrified Blood isn't an aura, so we actually have to go out of our way to use the ring to deal with its reservation. But it's just a fun, stompy build. If you like things like ice freeze explosions, if the satisfying kind of crunch of freeze explosions, then you probably would like this. And if you like ease of use like RF, it's like all of the tactile joy of a freeze build with all that crunch in combination with all the ease of use of an RF build. Now, it's not 100% hands-free. It's pretty close, but you do have to click a button every 10 seconds or so. So many of the things come together on this build. It just makes it feel really good. I mean, strength stackers in general these days have a lot of mechanics that are working together that just feel like they were made for each other because they honestly were. More so than just about anything else. I'm a little confused by GGG's direction with strength stacking. They're really going hard on the mechanics that support it these days. But we get to throw on a couple unusual things here that I'll chat about in a second. So you've seen some footage of how it maps, how it plays. It bosses pretty well too. Like I said, the damage will be at least about double this once we rework the tree because our health is going to be much higher and our strength is going to be much higher. What you're seeing right now is footage without any mirror Lake of Kalandra here, which is huge for strength stackers this league. Mirror gear allows you to get an additional, almost double your stats and health. It's just absurd. This allows us also, it really enables this build because this build, as you'll see in a second, I don't have that much strength or health right now, and it still works. So we're able to grab all of these uniques that don't have strength, and you know, it's nice. It's nice to have that flexibility due to how ridiculously strong the mirror gear can be for these builds. And even, as you can see, even without the mirror gear, it does really, really well. So let me pause that for a second, and we'll actually go into a little bit of the detail here. All right, so what's going on here? So you'll notice, like I said before, we're grabbing a couple strange pieces of gear that you're not used to seeing in a strength stacker. Most notably, probably, you know, a couple of them these days are using Crown of Eyes, but a lot of people are trying to utilize Battle Mage's Cry because you can scale it with things like War Cry effect to get even juicier than 150% of spell damage. If you're not familiar with the mechanic of what's going on here, we're converting strength using Iron Will to spell damage, and then we're using that spell damage to convert to attack damage at 150% of value. This allows for some real shenanigans, especially when you take into consideration things like Iron Fortress, which boosts your strength damage bonus to be 3%. So you've got a little bit of a scaling on there on top of the scaling that happens from the Crown of Eyes in this case. The most expensive thing that's probably catching your eye is the Replica Albronze. I already spoke about that, but there's another version of this exact same build that works as well, that I put together that doesn't cost anything, and that's, instead of Albronze Warpath, you just go with something like, you can even use you can use the hoofs, and as well as like a lead scepter, boost lead scepter to scale fire damage for your attacks and convert into fire. Now you don't get as much synergy between Dark Pact and your attack. Then you're not doing the same damage type between them, and that's the downside, which is why with the currency I prefer this setup. But you can do it for almost nothing price-wise with the other setup, which is nice. So we're using Wrathpith. Wrathpith is eventually going to be amazing because we're scaling health, and the build should have around 10k health when we're in endgame here. It's pretty explanatory. You get crit chance as well as spell damage per 100 health, and the downside being that you sacrifice 10% of your life when you use or trigger a spell skill, which we do very fast. And so this, in combination with Dark Pact, which sacrifices 8% of our life, together is 18% every cast. And as you saw in the video, you know, how's this happening? How are we able to sustain that even at maximum crit, at 100% crit chance in the middle of packs, constantly Dark Pacting and making 18% of our life go away? Well, right now at this level, first off, the interaction here is with Eternal Youth. So Energy Shield Recharge is applying to life, and if you haven't seen any of these videos floating around of other builds like this, how this works is you never actually take damage because of Dissolution of the Flesh. Dissolution of the Flesh makes it so that when you take damage, instead life is reserved. And as a result, you're never taking damage, so the recharge that's occurring from Eternal Youth is never turning off. So you're always getting this massive recharge. If we look at what it is by default here, you can see my recharge here is I'm always getting 2100 life back per second. I'm actually getting more, but I wanted to take my amulet off to show you what it would be if we didn't have the amulet on. And the way that I'm sustaining Wrathpith on top of Dark Pact, on top of 100% crit rate, is right now I'm using Blightwell. Blightwell is amazing for this. Blightwell gives you it only works during any flask effect, but we're a flask finder, so our flasks are always up. So we are always getting. I just grabbed one out of my stash. I didn't even care. The recharge rate is so high with this, you don't have to have it 200%. But I'm using 186% increased energy shield recharge rate during any flask effect. And what does that bring us up to? Oh, just about 6,000% health every second. So with 6,000 health every second, we're able to sacrifice any amount that we want and sustain our damage just fine. It's pretty entertaining, watching your health just pop back up to full after anything you're doing in the game. This is, as far as I know, one of the with Eternal Youth and one item having almost 100% per second life regen. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Now, for our weapon, all I'm using here is because Replica Elperon's Warpath, it makes it so that we can't deal non-chaos damage. So as a result, it doesn't matter what we have in our hand. Now, it has to be an axe or a scepter because Vaal Earthquake requires it, so we're stuck with those. And the other important thing here is that we don't want to have to invest into accuracy. So hits can't be evaded is a craft that we're going to want to put on this. The other stats I've got here, as you can see, we're stacking strength. So strength and spell damage, obviously, assists both our spells and our attacks because of the Crown of Eyes. So spell damage. And the other absolute necessity here is the crit strike chance. We want above 8% crit strike chance on the weapon. There's only a couple scepters capable of this in the game. The Platinum Scepter is one of them, so just be mindful if you're trying to do this, that you grab one. Now, earlier I spoke about having to take a ring in order to use Petrified Blood, and I was referring to Essence Worm. Essence Worm makes it so that we have no reservation, because if we did have reservation, that would hurt Dissolution of the Flesh, because it would take away 35% of our life reservation, and as a result, we would only be working with 65% of our total life pool, instead of being able to abuse this mechanic between Petrified Blood and Dissolution of the Flesh to use all of it. So that's very important. This isn't really something you can get around, which is a shame, because the ring slot is so valuable. The ring and amulet slots are so valuable for this build, because right now you can get rings with almost 200 strength and 200 health. So that's huge, but there's nothing we can do about it. We really have to give that up. Right now, I'm just using this is a crap ring that I'm using to fill out resistances. It will be replaced with a mirror ring, which will take this build to the next level. As you can see, you don't need a 6-white socket Iron Fortress. This is just something that's nice for people like me that like to test builds. So, it is hard though to get the sockets you need. As you can see, this is 5 off sockets. So I splurged here because getting off sockets this league is just annoying. If you already have your item 6 linked and you're trying to test things out and change them a lot, huge pain this league. Absolutely huge pain. I really dislike, for meme builds at least, I really dislike the harvest changes as far specifically for recoloring of items. That really hurts. For the gloves, what we're using is just some gauntlets that have strength with a strength implicit on top of some resistances and health. And we're just filling out more of those. A nice filler item, a super nice filler item for that you can use for this entire the entire duration is what you can do is you can use Doedries. Oh, actually, it was right here. This works great. You get one with Despair on hit, and it's amazing. It's actually significantly better than the gloves I'm using as far as damage output because of Despair on hit. And you get 100% increased spell damage, which also gives you 150% increased attack damage, and you have no downside because we don't care about cast speed at all. And it fills out some of your intelligence requirements on this build. Yeah, pretty straightforward. I leveled all the way through to like 85 with these gloves until I decide to replace them. Magnate's really great for this build. The upgrade here would be getting one maybe with corrupted additional all resistances so that we can take some of the stress off of the ring for that, and maybe eventually even drop this bismuth flask. And also the 10% chance to deal double or 5% for triple obviously applies to both your attacks and your spells. This is a huge potential damage boost, and we're doing a lot of attacks and spells per second. Builds got as fast as you can make your movement speed. It's a lot easier to scale your movement speed than it is to scale your attack speed, especially with an ability like Earthquake. So that's where we're coming from with that. Moving over to the skill tree, it's probably going to look a little strange to begin with. I like messing around with things like this. This used to be a lot better to do. It's not as good anymore, but there are a couple very large benefits from doing this. So what we're doing in the middle, we're a Scion, and we're grabbing 3 Might of the Meek, and we're stacking them. And the main things that this gives us is, well, for one, it gives us 50% spell suppression right here. And then it gives us 21% movement speed right here. It gives us an additional 65% or 85% actually spell damage in 4 points right here, which, remember, also translates to our attack damage. It gives us an extra 84% area of effect, which is absolutely huge. It gives us, it's boosting life and strength in all these places. It's giving us an extra 20% block chance in 3 points, which is extremely efficient. This build is almost block maxed. It's 64%. So high spell suppression chance at any given time, 70%, with an additional 65% block chance, on top of having armor, on top of having flasks up all the time. It's just very, it's got a ton of on top of a ton of health. It's a very defensive build, and you never stop. And that's the best way to not die in Path of Exile, is to not stop moving. But back to, anyways, we get a lot of things out of these Might of the Meek. There are downsides. I mean, we do get more health overall doing it this way. We get 60% as opposed to, I think normally with all this you get like 45% here, if I remember correctly. You can do this a couple of ways. This is just the setup that I stuck with. But before, like I said, we're taking a lot of keystones on this build. We're taking Mage Bane to fill out a little bit of extra spell suppression because we don't need the dex. We can't get evasion on this build. It's pretty important to have unwavering stance, or at least some other form of cannot be stunned, because Vaal Earthquake is a slow hitting skill. You do not want to be standing still when trying to land a blow and getting interrupted and then losing your souls and then just being screwed. Obviously, we're taking the Iron Will, we're taking Eternal Youth. The nice thing that I mentioned before about this build is because Vaal Earthquake lasts so long, and it's, I think, one of the only Vaal skills in the game like this. If you notice, it has a duration well, right now, mine's showing a duration of 12 seconds, but the soul gain prevention is only 9 seconds. It's one of the only Vaal skills like this. Every other Vaal skill is set up in a way that you cannot indefinitely maintain them. This is also why we're using Soul Catcher for the additional 10% reduced soul gain prevention duration. What that allows us to do is have a healthy amount of time between when the soul gain prevention ends and when our skill ends, so that we can always have the skill up. And we don't have to have Trader to do it at all. The skill will always be up, simply getting some flask charges gained on top of having a Soul Ripper in the build. And these two things together will just always maintain it. You might have to fiddle around with the numbers a little bit here as far as getting the timing right. But one of the nice things I found about Soul Ripper is that even with a use when charges reach full, it lines up perfectly with the skill. It seems to wait until your soul prevention is down before actually utilizing it. I started this build using the Trader, and I just took it off because it wasn't necessary at all. It's been really great. So another thing, if you're not familiar, because it's not a very commonly used skill, Vaal Earthquake, you can't up the duration. There's no point. And the reason for this is that, yes, it has a duration, but it has another condition that always ends it before that duration. And that other condition is ongoing effect ends after 9 aftershocks. I'll demonstrate this real quickly. So if you're running while you're using Vaal Earthquake, what happens is you make aftershocks every second or so. And what the skill is referring to here with ongoing effect ends after 9 aftershocks is those aftershocks. So regardless of how much duration you have left, if you watch the top left of the screen here, regardless of how much duration I have left on the skill, it will always end when these 9 aftershocks are up. And as far as I can tell, there's no way of scaling the aftershocks. You can't make them faster or slower. You can't get more of them or something like that. So as a result, as you'll see me use it here, in the top left there you see the countdown, the number of aftershocks, 5, 4, 3, and you'll notice that after it reaches, the buff goes away after it hits 0, and it still had 2 or 3 seconds left on it. So there's no point at all trying to play shenanigans around the duration. So don't even try. I know it would be nice if we could just like crank duration up and then hit our button once map instead of once every 10 seconds. But honestly, you get used to it. It's not too bad. One button push every 10 seconds isn't too bad. Back to the tree. So instead, what we get to use is Second Sight. And again, it doesn't matter that we're blind. We're using a weapon that has hits can't be evaded. So we get to negate the downside, really. And we get the huge bonus of 25% more melee critical strike chance while blinded. That on top of a high base crit chance weapon, on top of, well, there's a couple routes to go with this. You could use some of the Grand Spectrum critical strikes, but jewels, but there's you can do even better. I mean, the nice part about the Grand Spectrums is they would apply to your spells as well. Okay, Vaal sentencing here allows us to eke out more critical strike chance on the attack for less commitment here to utilizing our jewel slots. But right now I'm using Vaal sentencing. I believe 3 of them right here. We actually only need 2. It's not super important to have the 3rd. I just haven't taken it out yet. You are at like 97% crit chance with this setup, which is the 2, because we are using a increased critical strikes support on this setup at the moment. There's one thing that you could do to get around this if you really wanted to use that 6 socket for another skill gem is Pure Talent is eventually going to be a jewel that goes into this build, and the Shadow Pure Talent comes with a nice solid 0.5% crit chance. And you could also, in your Ascendancy, instead of going Chieftain, you could also go Assassin. And those two things right there would let you get rid of this support gem, the increased critical strike support. Now, I would Chieftain because it gives us an extra 10% strength on top of an extra 40 flat strength, which is obviously good for scaling this build. But in the end, right now, I don't think it's going to be. It may not actually be optimal to go Chieftain on this build. It might be better to go something else. I've looked at it a couple times, but like I said, I'm not endgame yet with this build. We're going down and grabbing blood magic, obviously, and grabbing the utmost might. And then we're just grabbing mostly some health and the jewels, the sockets, which are very important to us. And I've got survival skills on as well. Survival skills just allows us to always be gaining charges effectively. It doesn't work on bosses. It's not important to work on bosses because this build deals enough damage that your Vaal Earthquake is going to sustain itself on bosses due to the life it's going to be dealing. I have never had any downtime for Vaal Earthquake on bosses with this setup. It just doesn't happen. But that's kind of everything working together here. The parts I really like are the fact that it's Vaal Earthquake, which is not. I don't see it very often, and it has a huge radius in this build, right? We've got these 3 points here, an additional 64% or 84% area of effect. It makes both. It scales both the Dark Pact and it scales the Vaal Earthquake to huge degrees. I mean, if you didn't notice in the videos how large our Vaal Earthquake is, I'll go through, just run through some blood aqueducts real quick. You can tell just the default size of the normal earthquake there, but when we turn this on, you can see the shocks that are occurring, and you can see how large our Withering Step AoE is. You can see that the Dark Pact area just hits everything. Everything is just, with this amount of AoE, just feels really good. So those things in combination, and I also like actually getting to use Blightwell effectively for something, because I've only ever incorporated that, I think, in 2 other builds in my 13 years of Path, and it's a pretty cool item when you can use it. It used to be a lot better, at least to have a lot more energy shield recharge, but it's still got its uses, I guess, at least for leveling. Like I said, I would definitely replace this with a plus to strength, plus to life amulet once you can afford one. This league, both the Replica Elberon's Warpath and the Iron Fortress and the 32 charge Soul Ripper are going to be a little expensive. I'm not going to pretend this build is super cheap. 6-link Iron Fortress, count on paying 3 to 5 divs. Elberon's, count on pay another 20, and the Soul Ripper maybe 2 to 3 at this point. Everything else, super cheap. Even the jewels, nothing here. The Vaal sentences I can get for a chaos each. The brutal restraint will cost you like 20 chaos, but other than that, the dissolution of mine's a perfect one. I think I paid very little for this. I bought it a while ago. Maybe it's gone up since people have been making this a little bit more popular in the past couple weeks, and I bought it a while ago. So maybe that perfect dissolution's a little bit more expensive. I haven't looked, but anyways, that's that's it. I'll go ahead and link where the build is right now. I'm not going to link where it's going. I'll let people take that as they have it. I do plan on playing this character out to at least around 93 or so, just because it's really fun and it's super effective for fast clearing of certain types of content. For things like abysses, perfect. You run in a line, everything dies. So I have one more build, and then I'm going to be done with the league. I don't want to invest quite this much more time into into the league. So I've got one more really interesting build. I was really happy with how this one is turning out, and we'll see how the next one goes. Keep an eye out for it. I'll post a little bit more footage here of this, and we'll close out the video with that. Some thrilling tablet gameplay happening here. Me disappointed as usual with those last selections on the tablet. I don't know what happened, but after this last what is it, 3.19.2 are we up to now, patch, I am having a really hard time getting the switch location of water and open space selection. For some reason, I just had, after the patch, just have no luck with actually receiving that. I used to be able to delay my tablets by for a long time and actually build on them, but last day or two, it's just been terrible. Harvests are laughable, as you can see. Like you just walk all over them. With the whole video without making a these boots were made for walking joke. But anyways, thanks for watching. If you want to know anything, post below and I'll try to answer it. Thanks.
Moment's respite.